Why is Lorde being called a bigot in an ad that has been taken out in the Washington Post? We're gonna do our best to break down this story. There are a whole lot of sides to this, but first, what's caught headlines is the following ad that was posted in the Washington Post. You can see Lorde accused of anti-Semitism in full-page Washington Post ad as fallout from canceled Israel concert continues. So Lorde did cancel her show in Tel Aviv. She said in part in her statement, "I'm not proud to admit I didn't make the right call on this one." As a result of this, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi took out the full-page ad, basically calling Lorde and New Zealand out for ignoring Syria and attacking Israel, saying 21 is young to become a bigot. The ad goes on to read, in part, Lorde joined a global anti-Semitic boycott of Israel, but will perform in Russia despite Putin's efforts for Assad's genocide in Syria. There's a lot going on here, but Lorde said that part of why she decided to cancel her show in Tel Aviv was because of an open letter that was penned to her by an organization called BDS, which stands for Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions. The letter was written by a Jewish New Zealander and a Palestinian New Zealander, someone of Palestinian descent, and it's a long thing. I would urge you guys to check it out. In part, this is what they are saying to Lorde, which resonated with her enough to cancel her show in Tel Aviv. Since 1968, Israel has militarily occupied Palestinian land in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. The occupation is considered an affront to international law, and Israeli settlements in the area explicitly violate the Geneva Convention. The military occupation of Palestinian territories has resulted in an apartheid state. In this context, a performance in Israel sends the wrong message. Playing in Tel Aviv will be seen as giving support to the policies of the Israeli government, even if you make no comment on the political situation. Such an effect cannot be undone by even the best intention and the best music. As Elvis Costello put it when he canceled his show in Israel, there are occasions when merely having your name added to a concert schedule may be interpreted as a political act that resonates more than anything that might be sung, and it may be assumed that one has no mind for the suffering of the innocent. So that is what they said in their letter. Now, the ambassador of Israel to New Zealand has also issued an open letter to Lorde and has urged Lorde to sit down and for them to have a conversation. This statement reads, in part, music is a wonderful language of tolerance and friendship which brings people together. Your concert in Israel could have spread the message that solutions come from constructive engagement that leads to compromise and cooperation. Music should unite, not divide, and your performance in Israel could have contributed to the spirit of hope and peace in the Middle East. So there is a lot. I hope that we were able to break down what both sides are saying, and Lorde obviously came to her decision siding with what she heard from the people that wrote to her from BDS. Amir, what's your take on this situation? Do you think this is being blown out of proportion? Because a lot of people are just saying, hey, you're a musician, play where you're gonna play, just do your shows, get on with your business, you're not a politician.
I don't think the issue is being blown out of proportion. It's a really serious issue that we should talk about, but conservative Israelis rallying against something like this is not something new. Or taking out an ad in the Washington Post, for instance. They do this all the time. They did it in the subways and on the buses in New York. I don't know if on the buses, but definitely on the subways. So these kinds of ads, like against people, against Muslims, against Palestinians, that kind of thing it's not anything new. But regarding this whole situation, what I do have like a huge problem about is them calling it anti-Semitism for going against the Israeli government. Like the two are not the same. Like you can go against a government that has terrible policies that's resulting in the deaths of a people. Like some might even argue that it's almost genocidal, what's going on there. It's definitely apartheid. But you can't call that anti-Semitism. It's like, I'm against a lot of Muslim countries because of what the governments do, but I don't hate Muslims. I feel like it's like a similar thought process there.
Yeah.
Or you can be against like Trump's government, but that doesn't mean you hate America.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up, and that painting this without nuance is, I think, irresponsible to the whole story. This was something, I mean, the conflict in the Middle East is, it is a head scratcher. It obviously hasn't been solved. It is incredibly heartbreaking, and there's so many parts of the history that you need to contextualize. I woke up super early trying to do my best homework for this story, and this is kind of the conclusion that I came to. I think that if Lorde can educate herself as best as she can, make herself aware, and come up with her informed opinion that she can stand behind, then great. Yeah. But I think that putting her it's sort of like what we should be putting this burden also on the leadership more so than onto musicians. And I think just being aware of that is important.
But this is a good way to do that. This is, not only is it like a cultural sanction, but it's an economic one. And unfortunately, the people, the Lorde fans in Israel that really, at the end of the day, most of them, they're not the ones that are affecting all these things that are happening in Palestine. The government is. But this is one way to bring attention to that, and it's a fairly peaceful way to do it. And now you see everyone's talking about it. It wouldn't have had the same effect if Lorde went and did this concert in Israel and like maybe during the concert said something about it. It would not have had the same effect.
Yeah, that is interesting. Like, what if, if she had performed and then made a statement, or like, would that have been picked up so much, or would that have been a footnote? But now that there is this back and forth, you have people having to educate themselves and like, all right, what is going on here? Why is this so incredibly controversial? Why are people dying as a result of the violence that's been taking place here and the actions of different governments? Yeah,
we should always call into question when artists are going to perform in countries that have a really shitty track record of human rights and other things. Cause like
there's a lot.
Yeah, a lot of artists go to Saudi Arabia and they perform for princes there for private parties, and like we don't say like rappers, musicians, whatever. I remember when Muammar Gaddafi was still the leader of Libya. I think like Mariah Carey went and performed there amongst other people, and like there was some talk about like this, like don't do that, it's a bad call, but they still do it because they're getting paid a lot of money with no taxes.
And I think it's being done sort of quietly, and where I really applaud Lorde is that she took a very difficult stance in a pretty public way, where she, first of all, she cited a lot of what her inspiration or influence was in coming to this decision, this letter that was penned to her. She said, all right, I'm reading this letter on Twitter. Like, you can just look at that through her Twitter account. Then she issued a public statement. Like, this could have gone away pretty quietly with the PR capabilities and behemoths that you have behind you, and you're a huge star like Lorde, but she chose to deal with this head on, which I think is incredibly brave. And as long as she can stand by her decision and say, I have informed myself to the best of my abilities, I am confident in my decision, and in my view of the situation, then I think you have to applaud that, because how often do, again, stars perform in countries or for individuals and you never talk about it, and there's no responsibility and there's no awareness, and maybe there's some sort of a fluff apology after the fact. But I think to me that's sort of, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Now, Lorde was brave in dealing with this head on. She's gonna deal with a lot of flack, but
I agree.
Okay, well, I think we broke that down. Guys, there's so much to talk about with this story, so I'd be really curious to hear your take on it in the comment section below. Make sure that you read all the letters, the statements, educate yourself as much as you can, because there's so much to get into. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we will see you next time on Pop Trigger.